So it's great to be here on the latest episode of the podcast with Gordon Forrest, currently assistant manager at Hearts. Hi, Gordon.
Hey, Donald, how you doing? Thanks.
Very well. Yeah, well, it was good to see you again. Been an eventful season at Hearts this season. It was great to see you getting promotion there. You'll be pleased with that.
Yeah, I think obviously the main goal was to get out of the championship for the club. So, we've managed to tick that box. Another goal for us was the beginning of the season. That was coming back early pre-season because we had a big match against Hibs in the Scottish Cup semi-final, which again the boys done fantastic, and we were close in the final as well. Obviously taking Celtic to a penalty shootout, but going back to the championship, it's obviously good to get the club back into the Premier League, but it was a season of ups and downs and things that we've got to review and think about going into next season.
But it's it's a great achievement to get out of the championship at the first time, isn't it? Because it's a tough league, that league.
Yes, I mean that's the second season I've been involved. One with Dundee United, obviously a half a season with Dundee United as well before that, where we reached the playoffs and lost the penalty kicks to St Mirren. The following year, we managed to win the league with Dundee United, and then obviously the same goal was set at Hearts. But it's, as you said, it's a tough league. It's full of good players, good coaches, some tough environments. To go and play the games, and it's hard for the players, and in particular when you're a Hearts or a Dundee United, then I tend to find the games are even more difficult because the opposition raise that game a little bit more. So fair play to the players. They've done it first time they asking, and again looking back at the records, there's not a lot of teams that have done that in the past, in the last 25 years. Hibs had a few years down there, Rangers, Dundee United, and it's great that Hearts have done it twice now. And Robbie in charge, going down and back up straight away.
I know the setup at Hearts is superb, isn't it? And having that base at Oriam, how important do you think it is in modern football now to have a good infrastructure, behind you?
No, for us as a club, and for the players in particular and the staff, then it's what we have at Oriam is fantastic. You've got the structure of the buildings where we can use for the players for indoor training. You've got the outdoor astro, you've got the grass areas. Fantastic facilities for the strength and conditioning. The rehab, and obviously our player meetings as well. So we've got everything we need, which is great. Again, the facility is shared with other sports and other people. So there's there's bookings to be had to access things, but it's fantastic for us and what we're trying to do with especially the younger players as well, and then obviously what we're trying to do with the first team.
Yeah, and we were speaking earlier before we put it on the air there, running about your journey, and particularly in coaching, and you've just been to some amazing countries and worked with different associations and clubs. How did you start that journey about traveling and going to different countries?
I think coaching for me started, obviously I played in Scotland, not to a high level, but I always started coaching. When I was at Raith Rovers, it was Jimmy Nicholl. I don't know if you remember Jimmy Nicholl. Yeah. He was a manager, and even at a young age, as a young YTS player, as you called us back then, full time at Raith, Jimmy had me coaching the 9, 10s and 11-year-olds. So it really started back then, and he was a big inspiration to me in terms of just the way he went about his coaching, and his assistant Martin Harvey, and that's where it all started for me. And through my playing, Livingston, I was at Berwick, East Fife. I played in Iceland for a season as well, but I'd always coached every club I've been at, whether it be the young kids or the reserves, and through those times as well, I was always going through all my coaching licenses. It was something that I sort of set my sights on quite early, and that was through the SFA, doing my B license, my A license, and obviously with yourself a few years ago just finished that pro license. So it was always something that I wanted to get involved with, and when I stopped playing, then I went into that position with the Scottish FA football development department, both in Edinburgh and Fife. I've done that for 7 or 8 years, which was fantastic learning as well, meeting a lot of great people, and again educating myself to go a little bit further. I went back to study at college, sports coaching and sports development. So again, I was just trying to put as many things in my locker to hopefully or eventually go as far as I could. And I was fortunate enough to be looked at working with SFA and invited to go and work for the New Zealand FA, which was, it came at me quite quickly, and it was obviously a move I had to discuss with the family.
Yeah.
And we took that on board, and thankfully I got a supportive wife. And when we moved to New Zealand, my children were 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and 12 weeks old. So it was a big move, but it was just a fantastic experience out there. First and foremost, starting in New Zealand and just taking myself out of my comfort zone. As a person, as a coach, it was new people, new players, new environment, facilities, a lot of travelling as well, from New Zealand. So it was just so different from Scotland. And I think it was important for me to come out of Scotland just to learn. And again, no disrespect to it, but it's probably the best thing I've done is coming out of the country, going and learning from New Zealand. And I went into the MLS with Vancouver Whitecaps in Canada, and then obviously back to Scotland. But it's just been a real fantastic journey.
I know, it sounds it. And we'll come back maybe to that experiences in a minute. But what I'm really curious about, Gordon, is already, you can hear all your experiences. You've got thing, which is a lot of coaching. And you spoke about Jimmy Nicholl at Raith. But where did that kind of drive or desire to be a coach, where did that first start? Because I think it would be quite unusual, being in the game, and most players just want to play. There's nowadays, I think there's more people going into the coaching, kind of younger, but you seem to want to be a coach or learn about the game all the time.
I think it's really down to my family. Growing up, my dad was my coach. My mum was involved in the football. My brother was, secretary of the team. So, we used to run, or my family used to run all the football clubs growing up.
Brilliant.
And obviously, I was part playing, and a lot of my friends as well. But, I've just been part of that.
Yeah.
And then I see my dad doing it, and then he went into scouting, and, you just sort of get brought into football, and we're just football through and through. And unfortunately, my family's now got to deal with that. My little boy plays; he plays at Dundee United. The little girl plays. Obviously, my wife drives everyone about. But it was basically from an early age, just seeing my family involved in football, and then I got a buzz of obviously my playing side, but just working with players, even though being young myself, just working with even younger players, and setting up sessions, and it was just something that I enjoyed looking at and doing, and then obviously delivering, and then learning and getting better at as well. So just at my age.
So growing up, but then Gordon, I take it your family was a huge influence in your football development as a kid then, were they?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's one of those, and a lot of parents still doing it these days, that my mum and dad drove me everywhere. You're playing for your own team, or you maybe get invited to go and train with other. And back when I was playing, it was obviously you play for your own team, and you signed a schoolboy form. So my dad, my mum driving me to Rangers, to Hearts, to Dunfermline, where I'm from, to then eventually signing a schoolboy form at Raith Rovers. And as parents do, and as we're finding out just now, you do everything for you. I mean, this weekend I'm diverting, but this weekend my little boy's playing Hibs in the 09 age group on Saturday through in West Lothian, and then on the Sunday he's playing up in Dundee. So there's 2 days that he's doing that. My little girl's playing in Dunfermline. So it's you've got that support from the family. And again, my decision was to leave school to go full time with Raith Rovers. After starting my hires, and again, your family support you. They support that journey, and my journeys went from playing professionally full time for maybe 6, 7, 8 years to then going part time. And again, the family support you on going back to do your education to maybe move on to something else. So and I'm thankful that everyone around me has been quite supportive of, first and foremost, being as a kid going into my young career, but also my wife and family now support me to my coaching career, and they've obviously gave up a lot to go to New Zealand, to Canada, to now be back in Scotland. So you need good people around you.
I think that's a great message about needing good people. But one thing you can see already from yourself, Corey, and from what you share is how much your family, the whole family, just loves football as well. I'm sure there's downside, but you just love the game, isn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, my wife's had to buy into it. My oldest daughter, strangely enough, does not care about it. So she's 13, 14, so we've got one in the family who we force sometimes to... she gets dragged about places, but she's a wee bit older now, but she gets dragged about, or we force her to maybe watch now and again. But no, it's been important to me to have that support, first and foremost, from my mum and dad, but now my wife, especially the travelling, because she's had to, give up her career teaching, or she did take a career break to go to. She says she was only going away for a year, but we ended up being away for 8 years. But now she's back in teaching at primary school, Toryburn Primary School, just outside Dunfermline. So she's back on track with that now.
When you had to make that first decision, when you got the opportunity to go to New Zealand, was it a difficult decision to go, especially having a young family?
I think that was the most difficult thing, in terms of the position, the job. I knew it was going to be a good position, a good job, involved with the New Zealand FA, but I was also going out to work with the national teams. And that year was the Olympic year, so I was fortunate enough to work with the women's team as the assistant manager going into the London Olympics. So, I had a lot in front of me that I knew, right, this job's going to be good, but it was easy for me because I was the one that was going out there to work. What we really had to think about was, I'm taking a young family. My wife's going to be out there for the Olympics. I mean, I was away for 5 weeks out of the country, and I had a young family. But I think, going back to the original point of the question would be that, we're moving the grandkids. We're moving house. We had to pack up in a 20-foot, 30-foot container, send it across the world. And, we were, New Zealand's not a 2 or 3 hour flight to, like going to Spain or France or somewhere like that. It is the other side of the world. So that was the biggest decision about taking the family away, really. But again, we had the support, and we knew what it could be in terms of that career progression, and obviously the experience. I mean, staying in New Zealand is a fantastic country, and the kids loved it.
I often think, because there's always a strong connection, isn't there, between Scotland and New Zealand? But New Zealand's the only country, I think, in the whole world I haven't heard anyone say anything bad about. Genuinely.
Such a great place, such great people, and obviously for me going out there, it was English speaking language as well, and it was quite comfortable. And New Zealand football, and I was actually working for the Northern Football Federation as well, so it was a joint post, and they were fantastic with us as a family. They actually flew us out, me and my wife out beforehand to look at the place, to see where we'd be staying, and then they obviously relocated us, which made it
And how was coaching over there, early? Because you're saying, you went to the Olympics and you're working with the national team. Was there any differences in culture and how you had to coach there?
Yeah, it was. It's a country on the rise in football. It's quite a big rugby orientated sport. So it was actually, the federation and New Zealand football were actually about to drive a new 10-year plan. It was called the Holy Football Plan, just like what the Scottish FA do in terms of their grassroots into their coach education, into the elite pathway. So it was an exciting new plan. So I was involved again in the football development side. So working right throughout all the different age groups and the structures within the country, to delivering the licenses out in New Zealand. Just what I was doing back in Scotland, working with the SFA. So your New Zealand A license, your B license, etc. And then, the side part was the elite performance. And again, the structure was set up in regions, and looking at the talented players in the region, to then progression to the 17s, the 20s, and then the national teams. But there was a real hunger, from the people and the players, the parents, and everyone involved in New Zealand football to grow the game. So it was quite exciting, and it was great to be involved in. And obviously the sort of side track for me was working with the national women's team, which is, a part of the game that I've never been involved in before, and it was just such a fantastic experience working with the women's team. They were so committed, so driven. It was international football, and they were all playing at different, obviously, countries professionally, but just to have that experience along with working with a lot of the youth teams in the men's and the women's side as well was just a great.
And tell me a little bit about what it was like, because I know from different sports, being involved in different sports, how the challenge, it's really exciting and the pinnacle of a lot of our athletes career to go to the Olympics. But I know the challenges of going to the Olympics as well, everything around it, and as you said, they are 5 weeks away. How did you find that Olympic experience?
Again, it was just great to be involved in. First and foremost, for myself and my education, learning about international football and the preparation, because you're used to the weekly training sessions or the weekly preparation, in that sort of normal football, if you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, we had to go through the whole Olympic qualifying stages. So we're playing away in Papua New Guinea. Places like that, we're traveling there. You're preparing for that. We went into Austria. In the sort of altitude preparation. We spent a few weeks in there, and we played a competition there to then obviously go into London, and we were fortunate enough to start our journey there in the Olympic Village. So I mean, that and all was just a fantastic experience. I just remember back, we arrive in the Olympic Village, and you come around the corner, and we've got our own New Zealand building, and you've got all the other athletes standing doing the haka to welcome you in, and just things like that. We're getting involved with the culture, and the girls actually made us learn the haka to do it back. It was something that you're.
Is that on film? Is that on film?
It will be somewhere. It will be somewhere. I don't know if I've quite still got that, but just little things like that. And then you're going in the Olympic Village. You're in the big buildings having breakfast with all the other top athletes, and then you've got the opening ceremony. And from that we had to move to the obviously different stadiums. But it was the first time that New Zealand had ever got out the group stages, and we managed to reach the quarterfinals.
Brilliant.
Obviously we lost to the USA, who were a top women's team at St James's Park. But again, it was just a lot of learning for me as a coach, and that sort of preparation and delivery and turnaround from group stages into quarterfinal, and then basically the travelling side, because my next move would involve a lot of travelling in the MLS, which was
because that was to Vancouver, was it?
I was to Vancouver again. I come back from the Olympics. I think I've been in New Zealand about 12 months, and I got a call from Paul Ritchie. I don't know if you remember Paul Ritchie. Led the Hearts. Again, I met Paul on an A license, and a big message from me, and I've spoke a few times, would be that as a coach, you just never know who's watching you and who you meet on courses, and I mean that's been a big part of my sort of development and moves, is just meeting people, and then people asking you, would you go and work with them, or would you come? So it's something I've always spoke about, and working with coaches is on a course or on a pitch, you just never know who's
it's an incredible opportunity, isn't it?
And the opportunity again, just thankfully to Paul and Martin Rennie, another Scottish coach who was a manager in Vancouver, asked me would I come out and have a wee look around Vancouver, because there was a position as under 23s, under 18 head coach and manager of coach education. So again, I flew out there. I come back to New Zealand, and it was a conversation. How did I tell my wife that we're moving again? So I've come back and said, look, Claire, as her name was, I'm moving to Canada. And again, it was a moment where she trusted my judgment. And New Zealand football were fantastic with me again. They actually, they offered us a few positions to stay around, but they understood that, this is a new adventure going into the MLS, which was a massive league, or it was a growing league. We're a big club, and they couldn't really stop us doing that. So it was packing up another 20-30 foot container, taking the kids out of school, and then moving them to a different country. But
Vancouver's meant to be an amazing city, though, isn't it?
I mean, Auckland, where we stayed in, or just outside Auckland, was great. Vancouver's just another fantastic city. But again, you're setting up, new schools, doctors, cars. But it was just a whole process of settling in. But once again, as clubs do, they looked after us, they relocate us, they have people on hand that that help you out on all these kind of things. And then the journey as a coach started there with the 18s, the 23s. I was managing the sort of coach education for the coaches at the club, and it quickly changed at the club. They asked us to take on the sort of academy directorship, and they were trying to implement. There was a few changes at the club. They were trying to implement the curriculum. They had a full-time school residency, so it was such a fantastic setup. But then, as it happens in football, Martin moved on, Paul moved on, and the other assistant, Carl Robinson, took the position, and he asked me to go in, as his assistant. And again, it was great. I'm thankful to Carl for he gave me the opportunity. So I moved into the first team environment, and I just took a journey with Carol from there, and that was 5-6 seasons. Being involved in the MLS, which is a great league.
And what was going back to working at a club level again at the MLS? What was that like? What was that transition like from being?
Again, it was back to that week to week business as a coach. So you're constantly you're preparing for that match day fixture, that full week's training. You play the match and you're reviewing it, and it's that whole process. The thing that's different with the MLS is that you're traveling quite a lot. You're sometimes maybe going and playing at altitude in Colorado, or you're playing in heat in Dallas or Houston, or you're traveling into a different time zone in Toronto or New York, for these away games. So from what you're used to in Scotland or the UK, as a coach, it's a completely different league, in terms of that preparation and what you have to do with the players during the week, and how you got to work with them after that in terms of the recovery. So again, lots of learning, for me. And what I did find really hard to start with and coming out of my comfort zone was that your players are from so many different countries and cultures. We had a lot of South Americans. We had Argentinians, we had Costa Ricans, Venezuelans, Peruvians, Chile. It was great working with these players. But the challenge is, as a coach, in delivering sessions, forming that bond with players, with a different language, is different from being back in the UK, because you can go in the dressing room and have that banter, you can connect quite easily, but you have to find different ways of communicating, delivering sessions, and as I said, how do you get in players' heads? How do you form that relationship with them? So again,
So if I ask you there, because that was obviously you would have been working it out, how you coach with the different nationalities in the league. And the travel must have been huge, isn't it? Because if you're going Vancouver to Dallas, that's a long trip.
It is. I mean, Vancouver, where we were situated, we had the largest travelling schedule in terms of miles as well in the league. So, you've got your own, conference, Western Conference fixtures, but the Eastern Conference ones were the challenges, and and sometimes you're maybe playing, for example, New England Revolution, one weekend, and New York the following weekend. So sometimes we just stay out in New York, which isn't a bad place to stay, but we had to train out there, stay out there, just to acclimatise there and play for that fixture. But again, in the league, you were only allowed to charter a plane up to 5 times. I think it got up to 5 times. So you're going on commercial flights. You might go into Kansas, as you said, Dallas maybe, and that was a 2 flight for us as a team, like Vancouver. So those were the challenges that you had to think about, and it was so hard to win away in the MLS, and you probably see that from results and fixtures. So to win so many away games was a target, and thankfully Vancouver we managed to do that. Most seasons to to get a few 3 points on the road, and the home games is where you had to really pick up the points.
When you look back now, Gordie, how do you think that experience in Vancouver, and you've mentioned a few things about the travel and the different nationalities, how do you think that shaped your coaching?
Yeah, I think, and again, it's no disrespect to being in coaching, for me coming back, I wouldn't be, sort of where I am just now without, or I feel coming out of the country. I've worked with so many good people, in particular in New Zealand and in Canada. I was fortunate to work with two in particular, a guy called John Herdman, who's now the men's national team manager of Canada. But he was just great at what he'd done, in terms of that preparation and how he presented, and how he went about his business with the players. A chap called Tony Reddins, who now works for High Performance Sport in New Zealand. Again, just going over there as a sponge and learning from how they work with athletes and top athletes, at that as well, and how they prepared them. Then going into obviously the MLS and working with Martin, Paul, and then finally Carl, and how he dealt with players. His man management skills, was second to none. And then obviously myself preparing to work with top players. I mean, we had international players too, Costa Rican internationals. I mean, I'm working with a player, Christian Bolaños, who had played at 3 or 4 World Cups, for Costa Rica. Pedro Morales played for the Chilean national team. We've got the young kid Alfonso Davis, who we eventually sold. We played with Bayern Munich. So it was just great working with these top players, and challenging myself to be better as a coach, to deliver better sessions, to give them better details, because at the end of the day, they're putting their trust in myself as a coach to deliver these sessions, to work with them on video analysis, to work with them and improve. So, but I tend to find you sort of learn off these top players as well. It was just a great experience for me, and then obviously to come back to work with a fantastic coach like Robbie Nielsen, who's done great in Scotland, and obviously Lee McCulloch, who's the other assistant at Hearts as well. So it was just great for me to pick all these kind of moments up, abroad, because we had some really good players, and then we're coaching against some top players in the MLS as well. You're trying to analyse games. We play New York away, and they've got Pirlo, David Villa, Frank Lampard on the team. You're going to play against Orlando, and they've got Kaká. It's just from a little guy from Fife to go out there and to challenge yourself. It was just a great experience. But it's one that you've got to just throw yourself in there, and thankfully the players and our staff responded to it. We had quite a good successful run.
And what was it like then coming back to Scotland after being almost on the road for 8 years? Yeah,
again, it was a decision that you had to make as a family, and there was a few opportunities to stay out there. I had an opportunity to go into Australia as well, but I felt my wife's made quite a sacrifice for 7 or 8 years, and it was important to come back. She got into teaching, and we settled the kids back into school. And again, coming back, I was fortunate to be asked by Robbie to go into Dundee United, and I didn't know Robbie, but again, we had a good conversation. I've met him, through different times, coach education, Scottish football, and it was just a great opportunity that I couldn't turn down, and one again that I've learned so much, working from with Robbie. First and foremost at Dundee United, and now at Hearts. But it was a change for me again. It was back working with Scottish players and the Scottish environment, which as you know can be different. But again, the players we had at Dundee United were so welcome and so opening, and it's just adapting to. Again, no travelling for me. I'm used to jumping on a plane. At this time, I heard some people moaning about travelling to Ross County. That was nothing to me. That was easy, jumping on a a bus for a few hours. So, I was adapting to that, back to the sort of different facilities. We were fortunate to have, a good facility at St Andrews with Dundee United, a good facility with Hearts at Oriam, but we had top class facilities in the US. So, it was adapting to that. Different numbers of staff. We're, again, very fortunate in the US to have, you've got staff coming out your ears out there, for medical, sports science, equipment, all that kind of stuff. So it was, it's adapting to that, and then just working with the players. But again, as a coach, it's one of these things that you've got to do. And again, I was back and forward quite a lot before coming to United on my pro license. So I was meeting a lot of people back in Scotland, putting a lot of connections out there. So. And again, Robbie and Lee and Dundee United, everyone at Dundee United and Hearts have made it quite easy for me to settle back in.
You've got a good opportunity. I suppose you've been back a couple of years now, or you've been on the road for 8. When you come back and now, when you look at the game compared to when you went away, do you think, is it the same game, same culture, or has it changed at all?
For me, I think I would say it's changed, but I think it's because I've probably changed as well, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, total.
And things that I've learned, especially on the road, to bring back. But I think you'll know yourself that I think players have evolved and developed as well, in particular young players coming through. So it's been good for me to learn more as a coach, because I feel now players want and they need more detail. They need more preparation, or we can give them more preparation, and how we do that now. There's a lot of more skill sets, from coaches in terms of how we analyse games, how we deliver that message, how we deliver sessions, how we can work with younger players, and in particular, a lot of the things that I learned away on the road and I've put in place is working with players more as an individual now.
Yeah.
Individual sessions, individual video. And I think, or I feel now, players want a lot of that interaction as individuals. So, and again, the game has evolved as well. Players are hopefully, as you see, putting more into the game, more into their strength and conditioning, more into how they look after themselves. So it's, I would say, myself changing, but the game is certainly involved in Scotland and changed.
I think that's a really almost kind of profound point you're making, or about, when we leave our comfort zone or actually come out and go somewhere different, and then we return. There's a great saying, I can't remember if it was by Proust or someone, that said, goes on a journey and you come back to where you started, but look at it with different eyes. Yeah. So things are basically the same, but you're changed.
Yeah, I've sort of changed as a person, as a coach, and far better from when I left. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of frustrations of Scottish football and people in Scottish football that potentially don't want to change, or they don't see the change, and they're still in this bubble. But again, it's down to us to keep working on that and try and focus on certain things that we've seen and been involved in, and maybe try and implement that within our club.
Do you think, as a modern football club, and I know you came back with Dundee United, was an exciting time, and Hearts there as well, which is kind of back into the Premier League. Do you think it's a challenge for a modern football club, or a football club just now, their coaching team, to have the resources or the time to meet the demand that you said about meeting that individual needs of the player? I hear that quite a lot. How do we do that? How do we balance the team and the individual?
Yeah, I think, again, probably hit the nail on the head with the resources. Obviously, resources, staff, facilities, equipment, all these kind of things are important. But I think it's potentially down to the coach or the coaches and the coaching team. And, if you see that as an importance, I think, both Hearts and Dundee United, we do have a sort of high performance player program, which is an individual player program that we see as important to us in a club, where the players have their own individual development plan, or the young players do have that. And part of that plan, focuses around these 4 key areas, that technical, tactical, physical and mental, and how we can support these areas. They do have their plan, They follow their plan. We review the plan. Coaching wise, the technical, tactical side, we can dive into quite a lot, through on-field sessions and obviously the video sessions. The physical side, then, our strength and conditioning team can focus on that. The mental side is where we need more people like yourself in that, in that area, and support, because it's such a big part of the game for me, in particular the young players just now. And I would also say, again, it'd be good to get your thoughts even more in detail at some point on this whole COVID situation. It's been so hard, I would say, or harder as a coach, forming relationships with players, because generally they come into the training ground just now kitted out, they do their training session, they can't really hang around as much now, and they're away back home. So a lot of this individual work or more detailed work or spending more time with the player has been a little bit more difficult. Hopefully we can get back to full schedules, when
I think that's a huge challenge, Gordon. It's been with the COVID, isn't it? Because you're almost, well, the word is, it's, if they're coming in, it's a very sterilised environment, and they're in and out. So
it's in. I mean, we're used to getting the full team in for obviously match preparation meetings or unit meetings, the back four in a smaller room just to work with them, or even more one-to-one meetings. But it's been difficult to do that, because you just can't do it, due to the protocol and the rules, and just for safety as well. So a lot of that preparation and a lot of that development, and again, I'll keep going back to the young players in particular, we're missing a chunk of that, or we've missed a chunk of that. So we're going to have to bring that back around, quite quickly. But, I certainly know from, us as a club at Hearts, and what Robbie wants to do, then the individual approach or the smaller group approach is very, very important to us in the development of players.
I would agree totally, because that individual and then coming into small groups, it just gives more people a voice, doesn't it? You can hear people more. And,
you've got a lot of players in there that might not want to say anything in that that larger group, and then it just allows us. I mean, I started it in Vancouver, the high performance player program, and we've done a lot of good work with it. It was players from actually 12-year-old to 23-year-old, and we identified, and it couldn't be done with every player, but we identified so many players in the pathway, and I just it was another learning thing for me, and I've evolved the program in terms of how we planned it, how we documented it, how we delivered it, how we reviewed it, and it's something again that I've allowed me to bring that back into Scotland to obviously what we've done United at first, and then to Hearts, to where we're hopefully going to keep evolving it as well. But it's a thing close to my sort of heart, is working with players individually.
Brilliant. So, you've worked in the different countries and back in Scotland now, starting in Scotland. Is, in particular, a young player across the countries, or have you noticed a differences in approach?
I've noticed, for me, there's a difference, and a lot of young players I've been fortunate to work with. I've been fortunate to work with, a few in different countries, a few Kiwis, a few Canadians, we had some young Americans in, we had a few young South Americans, and then obviously Scottish players before I left and coming back. So it's been great just to see, how some of these players think about the game, and how they work. And, at the end of the day, for me, it all goes down, and it's how I'm preaching to young players. It goes down to them in particular, and how much they want to put into the game, and their commitment and their attitude towards, learning and developing. And what I've seen, and working with a lot of young South Americans, we just couldn't get them off the training pitch. It was unbelievable. We just, we're trying to tell them that training's finished now, but they just wanted to do overhead kicks, shooting. It was just such a joy, a joy to see. So there was managing that, obviously the language with these guys, but the culture. They just wanted to play football. They just wanted to kick each other. They wanted to play games. They wanted to train. They wanted to do extra. To them, working with a young player like Alphonso Davies, who has obviously got a story, coming out of Liberia as a refugee, going into Canada, 8 years old. We took him from his family at 14 years old because he had to move into to digs, and just such a great kid. You know, he's schooling, we had a tutor, but he just wanted to train, he wanted to get better. He wanted to make himself physically better. He put in the hours, and obviously he gets a move to a club like Bayern Munich. So, you know, you've got the culture of, you know, South America, and you've got kids that just want to work at it. But then again, I've seen and come a lot of kids that, you know, that are maybe not prepared to put that effort and work in, but they think that they're going to get there, which they'll learn quite quickly that, you know, that might not be the case. They might have a little bit of talent, but unless they match all these different pieces up, because the game's different now, as you know, with the physicality and, you know, how fit you need to be, how strong you need to be, and strong mentally you need to be as well, and obviously put the technical and tactical side. And if you're not prepared to put the work in, which, you know, I have come across a few young players, and you can only preach to them, and one day hopefully it clicks in their head. But no, it's been great, you know, just having a variation of international young players, club young players, and then obviously coming back to watch and see how the young Scottish players are approaching developing now.
Brilliant. I show my age when I talk about, there was a guy in one of the comics years ago, and it was he was a middle distance runner, and he used to win all his races on sheer talent, you know. So he would have a packet of chips, you know, and he would turn up with just one shoe, and he would be 5 minutes late but I know he would still win it. Through thing. And those days are gone now, isn't it? And not to say that talent and flair is not important, but as you said there, you have to put in the work, you have to be fit, you have to look after yourself. Do you see that developing even more, Gordon, that the science base?
Yeah, for me, it's a big part of the game. And I think, again, I'll go back to the resources. There's, you know, if you're a club that's fortunate to have that support around you, you know, we're fortunate at Hearts that we do have the facilities, and we've got good people at the club that sort of deal with that high performance side of, you know, the strength and conditioning side, the nutritional side, and it's there for the players. That's probably the best thing to say. It's there for the players. Hopefully they take that on board and they use it, or they want to use it. And again, I'll go back to, you know, there is some players that are all over it, but there's some players that need a push, that need a shove, and then there's some players that you just need to give that support to them and help them out, because they might know not anything about it. So we're fortunate at Hearts, we do have that. But you know, to answer your question, for me it's a massive part of the game now, as well as obviously the training pitch stuff.
Brilliant. So, and just finally, it's been great speaking to you and hear about your experiences in different countries and how coaching has evolved. If you had any, it's not advice, but any kind of pointers for a young coach, you know, starting off, you know, what would you recommend for them, you know, coaching pathways?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and you know, looking back, you know, on myself, and speaking of myself, is that as you put in the hours, you know, I've done a lot of hours working, you know, volunteering first and foremost, working at every club, working with a lot of different age groups. You know, I've worked with 5-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 18-year-olds. I've been involved in the male game, the female game. So it's putting yourself out there and challenging yourself with all these different people, because for me, you learn off younger kids, younger players, and then obviously you learn off the older players and the professional players. So yeah, try and get as many hours on the pitch where you can put practices in place and make mistakes, and and learn from that. I think educating yourself as much as you can. You know, I've done a lot of education in terms of my licenses. So I've managed to now go through the system to finalise my pro licence, but I'm hopefully looking to start a Masters in Performance Coaching next season. So that's a little bit different for me, a little bit more coming out my comfort zone. But visiting clubs, I've done a lot of visiting clubs, a lot of visiting coaches, visiting different sports. I was fortunate to spend some time with the Golden State Warriors in the US for my pro license, and that was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Going into a different sport with top athletes and a top coach and Steve Kerr and his coaching team. So different sports has been very good for me. And someone maybe I mentioned at the start, in terms of going through your coaching career. You never know who's watching you as a coach. And all my positions, I would say, or a lot of them, or my progression has been from, people watching me on the pitch on courses, or just meeting them and just communicating and just forming relationships. So that's been a massive help to me, is meeting people, just being out and about there.
Brilliant.
So that's probably the best.
That's superb. That's superb, because I lived what you're saying through all your experience, and you've gone out and done it. So you've been coaching all those hours. You're constantly educating yourself. Pushing yourself.
Yep.
The bit that a lot of people miss, what you said there, is even by going on courses, some people say, "Oh, I'll know do on that. I know that already." It's who you meet, isn't it? It's that power of the human connection, isn't it?
For me, the courses are great, and what you learn in terms of the details, great. But a massive part, or the best part for me, is who you meet on the courses. And again, just going through that pro license there, or the one that I went through, and we were part of it. Some of the guys on that course were fantastic, and you can listen to them, you can learn from them. You're like guys like Callum Davidson on the course, who's now doing fantastic. St. John's, Jesse Marsh, who's now moved from the US to Salzburg to Leipzig, and you're listening to these guys. Jack Gross, who's at Hibs, you're just listening and learning for these guys, and now they're hopefully contacts for life, where you can maybe call them up and get some advice from them as well. So the courses are really important for me. Really
brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, Gordon, because I know you've got a game tonight, so all the best for that, and hope to catch up with you soon.
Thanks for the invitation, and always great to catch up.
Cheers, Gordon.